House flippers, stop overpaying for properties. Today, we're going to look at the flip formulas. We're going to talk about the front end of the formula, which is how much should you pay when you buy a property? You're never overpaying for a property after you know this formula. And second, we're going to talk about the second part of it. How much should you profit when you flip a property? First one we call the flip deal formula. So what do I mean? Well, how much should you be paying when you buy a flip property, right? What is the max amount you pay? That's one. And then number two is going to be what we call is the flip profit formula, meaning how much should I be profiting when I flip a property? So let's deal with formula number one, and that is the flip deal formula. So remember, the first thing we have to find out is, hey, what should I be paying? How do I know whether I'm paying the right amount when I am buying a property? Most people, the number one mistake they make, they pay too much. And then guess what happens? Their rehab runs over and they don't quite sell it for the same amount. And so they end up not making as much profit. After today, you're never going to make that mistake because I'm going to show you the formula that is going to help you. So number one is we're going to calculate what is the ARV of the property, meaning after repair value. Really important. How do we calculate that? We look at the comps, meaning other properties that have sold within that area. By area, I mean generally either within that subdivision, if it's in a subdivision, or within 1 mile. Now, if you can find similar or like kind properties within half a mile, that's even better. The closer it is, the tighter your numbers are going to be. So let's say you have a 3-bedroom and 2-bath property that you want to buy as a flip. And you can't really find 3-bedroom, 2-bath comps. You can only find comparable properties that are 3-bedroom, 1.5 baths, or 4-bedroom, 2 baths. So, well, if it's a 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath that's completely renovated or in really nice condition, what are you going to do? Your subject property is a 3-2, meaning you have a little bit more amenities in terms of bathrooms. So let's say that property is selling for $300. You're going to add to it maybe about $10,000, $12,000. So you're going to consider that, well, my property has 3 bedrooms, 2-bath, and it's going to be in mint condition. So the comp, you're going to bring it up a little bit, about say 310, 315. But if you're comparing another property and that's a 4-bedroom, 2-bath, and let's say it's sold for 320, 330, you're going to subtract from that a little bit, meaning that's a 4-bedroom property. Your property is only a 3-bedroom. So you're going to have to do a little bit of adjustment. If the comparable properties don't have as many features, as many amenities in terms of bedroom, bath, condition, you're going to basically add and or subtract given the condition of those properties. So we're going to start with the ARV first. So let's say the ARV on the property is $400,000. That's your back end value. After you looked at your comps, you came up with that number. You feel pretty good about that. That is a number that is realistic. Now you're going to take 70% of that number. So 70% of 480 is going to be $280,000. Then you're going to subtract the rehab out of it, whatever your rehab number is. So in this case, we're going to consider that our rehab number is about $70,000. So if my rehab number is $70,000, then I know the max I need to pay is going to be somewhere around $210,000. Now, if you're in the middle of Iowa, if you're in Chicago, if you're in California, this formula really does not change because guess what's happening? We're taking 70%. Why are we doing that? That accounts for our selling costs, that accounts for our carrying costs, and that also accounts for your profit that is built in. And then we're subtracting your rehab cost. Obviously, if you're in a more expensive market, your numbers are going to change just based on that. But every single time, if you use 70% and you are on point with your rehab numbers. Even if your rehab numbers are off a little bit, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 here or there, it will not make a difference. But this will prevent from you ever overpaying for the property. So now we figured out, okay, what should I be paying for the property? Well, the second thing is, why are we doing this for? Well, we're doing it because we want to make a profit. So what's our flip profit formula? So let's look at that. Now, it's a 2-part formula. So the first part of it is pretty simple. We want to make 20% of ARV. So what does that mean? If the ARV is 400,000 in this case, then I want to make 20%. So 20% of this number is going to be 80K. I want to make $80,000. That's the first part of it. Or the second part is the rehab amount. So what is the rehab amount in this case? So rehab in this case is $70,000 is what we said our rehab was. So if it's this or this, whichever one is greater, and we want to do that in six months. So the way it works is here we know this is 80,000. We're going to look at the rehab amount is 70,000. In 6 months, in this case, since this amount is greater, I want to make a minimum of 80,000 bucks. What if this rehab amount was 90,000? Well, then you got to take the greater of the two amounts. So why do we do that? And this is really, really important. I mean, think about it this way. Let's say you work somewhere, and for 2 weeks, they're paying you X amount of dollars. You're like, oh my God, I get paid really, really well. What if they made you 4 weeks and paid you the same amount of money? Would you be happy? Suddenly, you'd be really, really unhappy because you're like, hey, I worked 4 weeks and you paid me the same amount of money. Exactly the same thing. In a flip property, what takes the most amount of effort? Well, it's the rehab. So if you're going to do less rehab, meaning I'm going to do 40, 50,000 worth of rehab, and I make 20% of 4,000, oh my God, I'm really happy. But what if I do 90,000, 100,000, 120,000 worth of rehab? That's a lot more work. So then it's 20% of the ARV or the rehab amount, whichever one is greater, and I want to accomplish that in 6 months. So if it takes me 8 months, 9 months, 10 months, guess what I have to do? I'm going to have to adjust that number a little bit higher. So now you know the first part of the formula, which is what is the maximum amount I'm going to pay when I buy the property, which is your purchase side of the formula. And then you also know what is the amount you need to make when you flip a property, meaning what should your profit be on a property? Now that you know both the formulas, you know next time you never have to overpay, and you are going to make at least a 20% profit.